It's Jack from B&T MacFarlane. Today we're going over the difference between getting a tractor and getting a skid steer. So let's get into it. We're making this video today because choosing between getting a tractor and a dedicated skid loader can be one of the toughest decisions that you make as a property owner and as a business owner. There's some properties, if you just have about 2 acres of maintenance that you're looking to do, you might not even consider getting a skid steer. And then there's the flip side of the coin as well. If you have a giant construction company and you're not really doing any kind of maintenance work, then you might not even consider getting a tractor. This is for the person in between, the company owner who could go both ways with getting a tractor or a skid steer, or the property owner that has a bit larger property and a bit more rough, heavy duty work that they're looking to do, that a tractor just might not cut it. And then that's when they would start to consider getting the skid steer. So we're gonna go over some of the pros and the cons of both, and where a tractor would be superior and where a skid steer would be superior. So we're gonna start off on the tractor. The first obvious thing you're gonna think about when you're looking at a tractor is the size of it. So behind me is a 65 horsepower skid steer, and this is only a 25 horsepower tractor. As you can see, the tractor, it is significantly bigger than the skid steer. So if you're looking for something that is small form factor with a ton of power behind it, then the skid steer will be the thing for you. So if you're working in tighter, confined areas and you don't have the luxury of using a tractor to make nice wide turns, then that's when I would definitely consider a skid steer. But if you're on a bigger property that's more wide open and you have that luxury of being able to turn where you want to and you're working on bigger job sites, then a larger tractor might be useful for you. Because if you want to get a tractor that's about 65 horsepower, you're going to have to go way up in size. The 65 horsepower tractor is massive compared to this, and it's significantly bigger than a 65 horsepower skid steer. The next big thing you're going to consider when looking at these two options is the lift capacities and what the front loader capabilities will be. In general, a skid steer will lift significantly more in the same kind of size. I chose these two tractors because the L2501 is about the same physical size as the SVL65, but the loader on the L2501 is about half as strong, maybe even less, maybe a third as strong as what the SVL65 is. And that's just because of that extra horsepower behind that and with the bigger hydraulic pump. Another thing to note about loaders on a skid steer and a tractor is the lift path of them. So on a tractor, you're typically gonna see a radial lift path, which means that it's fixed at the back. So when you lift the tractor up, as you bring the load up higher, it's going to get closer and closer to the operator station, where the skid steer, when you lift that load up, it's going to stay vertical. So there's actually cylinders that continuously push those loader arms forward so that it keeps staying in the same spot. That makes it very nice when you're loading trucks and unloading pallets and stuff like that. But when you look at the geometry of the front of the skid steer, the bucket is very, very close to the track. So when you go to use that loader, you can't tuck yourself up close to something. So if you have to unload a tractor trailer, say with round bales, it does make it a little bit awkward and potentially a little bit dangerous when you're doing so. You can see the tractor, you have a bit of play. It's about 4 feet to the front of your bucket, plus another extra little bit if you get bale spears or forks. The next thing you're probably going to consider when you're shopping around for a piece of equipment is what kind of attachments you can actually put on it. The skid steer right up front, this is the only spot you can put attachments on, are to the skid steer style quick coupler, along with that high flow system over there. So we do order all our skid steers with high flow. You can save a couple of bucks going with a low flow model, but we don't typically recommend it. The cost savings don't really outweigh the negatives of not being able to run some attachments you might want to down the road. So the attachments, like I said, they all run up at the front here off of the hydraulic system. There's no rear attachments, no side attachments, no mid-mount attachments on a skid steer, obviously. So it's just up here. And the attachments, they're a lot of money. If you've ever shopped around for a skid steer attachment, say a snowblower or a rake or forks or anything, they're significantly more expensive than the comparable models to the tractor. And that's just because they're a lot more intricate and a lot more advanced. When you think about how it's getting ran, it's on the front of the skid steer, which is a pretty universal mount, so that's not the issue. It's the hydraulic motors that actually run these things. It's not just run off of a mechanical shaft like you would see on a tractor. It's actually run off of a hydraulic motor that has to be physically mounted to the attachment that runs from the skid steer's hydraulic ports. This right here, this is where you're gonna hook up the majority of your attachments to, is to a 3-point hitch with the PTO shaft coming out of the back. So that's why the attachments on the tractor are a lot easier to get and a lot more cost effective, because they're a lot more basic attachments. There's not a whole lot going on the stuff that you do put on the back here, whether that be a snowblower, a rotary tiller, a rotary cutter, or anything like that. It just hooks right back here, and this again is a universal setup. And on the front, you're not limited to just the bucket. We do send them all with the skid steer quick attach, but you can't run too many hydraulic attachments on tractors until you get into huge tractors, say 70, 80 horsepower, until it has enough flow rate in order to effectively run like a front mount sweeper, a snowblower, or anything like that. The next thing we have to talk about is the visibility on these two machines. Not looking at them, but looking out of them. On a skid steer, as you can see, you're very confined inside of the cabin. So when you're looking out of there, your visibility is very limited from the sides as well as the rear, unless you have some kind of camera system. But if you're going to be using a skid steer on a job site, people are more aware typically on a job site because they know what kind of machinery is going to be around them. But if you're looking to use this on your own personal property, you have to be mindful of who's going to be around. Is it going to be your neighbors? Is it going to be your kids wandering around playing in the backyard? You want to be able to see what's going on around you. And with a tractor, it's a lot easier to do that. You're up in the open, and if you do get a cab, the cabs are like giant fish bowls. You can easily just look around and see what's going on all around you. Some more key pros on the tractor is it physically moves faster. If you're going from point A to point B on a large property, this tractor will go significantly faster than any skid steer will ever travel. And if you've ever used a skid steer, you know they are somewhat painfully slow in some situations. And with that being said, if you're driving it on your property and it's nice and finished in some spots, a tractor won't rip up your property as much as a skid steer will. If you use that skid steer, it's a lot heavier machine. When you turn those tracks, you're gonna rip up your lawn and rip up whatever nice finished property that you do have. If you're looking for a machine that's going to run a ton of attachments and have a very capable front end loader, then a tractor will be the machine for you. If you don't have some heavy construction jobs and some really heavy lift capacities that you need to lift around your property, and you still need to keep the PTO out the back to say run a snowblower or run a tiller or run any kind of farming attachments, then again, a tractor, it's going to be way more suited for you, and it's not going to break the bank. The tractor itself, it's a smaller upfront cost as well as the attachments. The attachments are way more cost effective than getting into a skid steer. The only disadvantage is if you're going to be using it for heavy duty construction jobs where you need a front end loader to dig into, say, old asphalt or tear up some gravel, then that's where a skid steer is going to be a little bit more suited for you. As I just mentioned, if you're looking for a machine that's an absolute workhorse and you need the most possible lift capacity, then a skid steer will be the machine that you should start considering. And if you're working in tight, confined areas, if you need this to clean out, say, barns and horse stalls, and you can't afford to have a bigger tractor going in there and doing an 80-point turn trying to get out the doors, and you need something that just gets in and out and super quick and gets the job done really, really efficiently, then a skid steer, again, it's going to be amazing. But if you are on a bit of a tighter budget and you don't want to spend a ton of money on attachments, then that's something to consider upfront as well. You might find a good deal on a used skid steer, but then you start looking into the attachments. Even the used ones, they can be pretty pricey, so definitely consider that at the time of the purchase. I just wanted to thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying the videos, remember to like and subscribe, and if you need help with parts, sales, or service, give us a call at 613-225-0555. Thank you.